I'm Cherokee Watkins. I'm going to be doing my refutation on the claim that global warming will be a serious threat to humanity in the near future. So, the advocate's secondary claims were that there are more intense, persistent natural disasters, increased health risk, and the resources will become scarce. So, to start, I'm going to start with her main claim. She says that global warming will not be a serious threat to humanity in the near future. Using the phrase near future in her main claim is very confusing for the audience because we don't know what the near future means. According to dictionary.com, the near future means very soon, within a short time. For example, we'll be needing a new car in the near future. So using this timeline is very incorrect. It gives the audience a false sense of fear because we think global warming is going to affect us, when in reality it's not really going to affect humans for a really long time. This time gives us opportunity to come up with more ways to combat global warming and even solve it. So using the near future just makes it seem like it's something that we can't help. So her second claim, or her first secondary claim, is that more intense and persistent natural disasters are going to come about. So she says that heat waves have increased and intensified wildfires. She uses the quote, according to the National Interagency Fire Center, 2015 has had one of the worst wildfire seasons on record. Between January 1st and September 29th, 2015, there were 50,030 wildfires in the U.S., which burned 9 million acres. So this is an interesting statistic to bring up. However, it doesn't really apply to global warming. Although fires can be caused by nature, according to the National Park Service, as many as 90% of wildland fires in the United States are caused by humans, not by global warming. Therefore, if we focus on teaching more fire prevention, the amount of wildfires will significantly decrease. And to improve this claim, the advocate could have found statistics that show a direct relationship between global warming and wildfires increasing. Without this information, the advocate seems to be assuming that the statistics stated above increased because of global warming. And even further, the website of the agency that the advocate used doesn't attribute global warming to being a cause of wildfires. The place that I got, they say that the only the only thing they mention is that smoke affects global warming in our environment. Moving on, she goes on to say that heat waves have also caused severe problems to our agriculture. The California drought has decreased the production of food, which will eventually lead in a decrease of food for our country because California is one of the main food-producing states. Here, the advocate directly contradicts herself by pointing out that California is in a drought, yet we are still the #1 food-producing state. To make this point more convincing, she could have found evidence that shows that the increase of heat waves is due to global warming. She goes on to say that natural disasters have become more extreme, leading to damages in home, businesses, and even death. She leaves that just there, and I feel like this needs a statistic or some kind of proof. As a listener, how am I supposed to believe this statement? It's not a common sense statement, therefore it requires evidence for the audience. She quotes a scientist and it says a research scientist at NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies, Columbia University, suggests that. So one thing that caught my eye here was the use of the word suggest. It immediately makes me doubt whether the statistic is a fact. The scientist says as temperatures continue to rise, more and more water vapor could evaporate into the atmosphere. So using the word could, it tells me that the scientist isn't sure if this is actually going to happen. And also, this in the whole secondary claim, fires were brought up, and then the California rain drought. So wouldn't rainfall be good for us? Because she brings up that water vapor will bring more storms. Her secondary claim too was increased health risk. She says that climate change is connected to ozone pollution. The rise in temperature leads to increased ozone. According to the Union of Concerned Scientists, millions of Americans suffer from the harmful effects of ozone pollution. But be they children too sick to go to school, high school football players not allowed to practice outdoors in the summer, 65-year-olds with lung disease unable to take a walk in the park, or farms at risk when they harvest their fields. So here the advocate does a good job of bringing up evidence that pertains to her subject. However, her claim is that global warming is going to be a serious threat to us. Yes, she's bringing up very minuscule problems. These are problems that can be solved with allergy medication and indoor gym, with breathing treatments, stuff like that. So her last claim on this secondary claim is that allergy season is longer and shorter due to growth rates of pollen. She quotes a statistic: the lengthening pollen season may exacerbate hay fever symptoms for some 40 million Americans with allergic disorders. This claim is in need of some clarification. The advocate should first show evidence of global warming being the cause of the increase in pollen during the allergy season. And also, this is not an important, really serious issue. So her secondary claim 3 is resources will become scarce. She says that rising sea levels will displace millions of people, and gives the statistic that 100 million people live within 3 feet of sea level and will have to be relocated soon. According to National Geographic, sea levels are expected to rise between 7 and 23 inches by the end of the century. So by 2100, sea levels will not rise over 23 inches. Therefore, in 2100, the tens of millions of people quoted will probably not have to move. She says that the advocate says that glacier and polar ice caps are melting at a rapid rate, which will lead to the scarcity of fresh water. Again, this is in need of evidence and support. The only way we're going to see global warming's impact on our water is if we press the button on a water fountain and no water comes out, or if a restaurant tells us they don't have water. But from now on, water is still free to humankind. It's not a resource that is needing to be worried about. Her last claim is ecosystems will change, such as migration patterns, which can cause extinction to animals that humanity depends on. The advocate doesn't have the evidence for this claim, and it is a very general claim. She is saying that animals that humanity depends on are going to become extinct. One, she should bring up the animals that are going to become extinct, and two, they should show the evidence that they are going to become extinct, because this really makes the audience worry about global warming and become convinced that it's something that is going to affect us in the future. So overall, the speech is in need of better wording and evidence to support the main claim.
Well, structurally you follow everything, but the argument doesn't sound much like an argument. Most of the time it sounds like a critique. Here's how you could have proved something better. Here's what's wrong with the way you presented this. Here's, if there was some evidence that suggested this, then maybe we could believe this, as opposed to criticism. She failed to present evidence to offer this claim. We need the declarative statements, this is not true. Here's some information that shows that it's not true, or that the source that's presented is not particularly reliable. I thought 90% of what you were talking about were presses. They're okay presses to make if you have no time to prepare for a response, but they certainly seem inadequate in combination with the the subject matter. The advocate presents information, and you're parsing words. Could, suggests, maybe. As if there is some degree of uncertainty that comes about that. Well, of course there's uncertainty, that's why we're making an argument, but you don't give us any reason to doubt the opinion of these experts, other than the fact that they used words that suggest that they are in fact making an inference, which is what an argument is. So I don't think that helps you very much. The one argument that was responsive, that developed a little bit of information on its own, was about the wildfires and the notion that human activity is primarily responsible for the wildfires. I think that's pretty good, although that might easily be answered by an argument that says, and that you wouldn't get as big a wildfire if everything wasn't dry as tinder because of the droughts that are caused by global warming. I think that there are a lot of challenges out there to the relationship between the weather patterns that we have and global warming, and I don't hear any of those challenges. On the food issue, you do find an interesting contradiction that you kind of point out and says, well, we're still number one even though we have a big drought, but a longer argument might present bigger issues. It's not a debate at this point, but down the road it's going to be. And once again, that sounds more like a critique rather than a refutation. The ozone argument, You did have one place where you made a claim that I think tries to diminish the argument. You say, look, these are minuscule issues that are easily solved by having an indoor gym or having an asthma inhaler. It's not really something that we should be worrying about. However, it mostly concedes the notion that heat and ozone is related to global climate change. And there's just a whole bunch of stuff on global climate change that I think needs to be argued about here that is largely ignored in your argument. On the last point on scarcity of resources, I didn't even understand your argument about water except to say, well, as far as we know, we're not going to run out of water until it doesn't come out of the tap. That seems to me like a very limited way of looking at this issue, and I'm not sure that you are going to convince anybody with an analysis like that. All right, thank you.